This is a $90 prototype Insanity. This is a $50 old Vibram disc. And this is a memorial disc that contains some of the ashes of the creator of disc golf, Steady Ed Headrick. Our question today is, are super rare discs worth the money? To find out, I'm throwing some rare, out of production, and very expensive old discs to see if they were, or still are, any good. Because the disc is in the details. Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs, and before we dive into these old discs, a quick announcement about some new ones. That's right, the flavors of summer have arrived. You can get our new lemon, bubblegum, and grape hexagons right now at sixsideddiscs.com. We're extra excited to finally have purple hexagons back in stock for the first time since our first run lavender. Plus, we have a fresh batch of our 3D printed mini hexagons in a bunch of fun summer colors, and surprise, they glow! And they're all available right now at sixsideddiscs.com. Now, new molds, special editions, and tour series keep the modern disc golf economy running. But there are tons and tons of old discs out there, and I came across a stockpile of them a couple weeks ago. We recently went up to a small town in Michigan, East China Township, for a random pop-up market that happened to include several other disc golf vendors. It sounded like a fun time. It meant we could take our new-to-us RV out for its first trip. We could record a promo for our wholesale partnership with Atlantic Disc Golf in Canada along the St. Clair River. Yes, that is actually Canada in the background. And of course, we were also there to sell a few discs. But unfortunately for our bottom line, another vendor had quite the stockpile of old discs. And I spent pretty much all the money we made at the event on these. The question we'll try to answer today, though, is if any of them are good enough to make my bag. Let's start with a brand we know, but a disc that we don't. This is the Discraft Storm. Approved by the PDGA in 2002 when I was a freshman in high school, the Storm is described as a, quote, super mid to long range disc that is very predictable. And apparently the Storm was a big deal back in the day. I mean, just look at these reviews on Discraft's old website. Quote, the Storm is the straightest disc I have ever thrown, and its dead straight flight always surprises people. Excellent for tunnel shots. It's also great for long controlled turns on either hyzer or turnover. Or how about this one? The Storm is the most underrated of all Discraft discs. I can throw it almost as far as my other drivers, and you'll be surprised by how straight it goes. And with such great reviews, the Storm obviously took disc golf by storm, right? Well, no, it was discontinued in 2007. I mean, I guess maybe it didn't fly that great, or maybe, whoa, holy crap, that must have flown great, because look how it flies today. Keep in mind that this is a beat-up, lightweight disc that's over 20 years old, and it still has this smooth, straight flight. And even when I thought I shanked it a little nose up, it still had just a faint turn and a gentle fade for a pretty straight shot. That is hugely impressive. Would it earn a spot in my bag? I don't think so. It's kind of competing with the Trail and the Castoplast Malm, and there's a new disc coming out from MVP that might fit between both of those pretty nicely. From one brand we know to another, here's the Raven from Innova. The Raven was approved by the PDGA way back in 1994, and I grabbed it because I'd honestly never heard of it. Little did I know that Innova still technically makes it. The Raven is actually available right now from the Innova factory store. It's listed as a 6-speed, wide-diameter fairway driver, though it certainly feels about the same size of any other fairway driver, and it's also rated with flight numbers of 6.4 -2.2. And that expected flight, combined with its age and the condition here of what feels like DX plastic, would lead me to believe that this will be incredibly understable. But no, it's only slightly understable. And that may not sound like an accomplishment, but as far as I'm concerned, for a 30-year-old DX plastic disc, the fact that it's still in one piece is an accomplishment, and the fact that it still has a tiny bit of stability is very impressive. In fact, here on this throw, it even manages to land flat at the end of its flight. Pretty impressive, but not a slot that I'm looking for my bag, so let's move on. Next up, we actually have a disc that we talked about in a previous video but couldn't get a hold of. This is the Ozone Discs Andro 1. And the design of the Andro 1 is maybe one of the most thought-provoking approaches to disc design that I've seen in a long time. Here's the idea. The Andro 1 has two grooves in the disc, one here in the center and one out on the edge. One of them contains a dense, heavier rubber, while the other contains a squishy, lightweight foam. The intention here was for you, the player, to be able to remove the weight inserts and swap them out, put foam in the middle and rubber out on the edge, or vice versa. This would change the weight distribution and therefore the expected stability of the disc. However, the PDGA would only approve this if the inserts were permanent, so that, along with some manufacturing issues and desire for higher quality, meant that Ozone had to go back to the drawing board and eventually closed shop. But were they onto something with the design of the Andro one? I'm not so sure. Firstly, it's way softer than I expected, and also way more overstable than I expected. Every single throw had a lot more stability, which is all the more interesting since the current insert configuration on this disc has the heavy rubber on the inside, which in theory should make it less overstable. The Andro 1 is a crazy concept, and I know that Ozone Discs is working on some new prototypes and ideas because we featured them in previous videos, but the Andro 1 is not getting a spot in my bag. But in the world of rare, expensive, secondhand discs, no one is bigger than Vibram. With a lineup of at least 20 discs, they were the original rubber disc with a huge cult following, and there are still countless players that covet them today. A quick search on eBay or Facebook Marketplace will turn up Vibram discs listed for well upwards of $50. I was able to pick up these three for a lot less. These are the Lace, the Ascent, and the Ridge. Now, even though they're rubber, the Ascent is the only floppy one in this bunch, which is bad news for me because floppy disks and I have never really gotten along. After all, just a couple weeks ago, I threw the very floppy Elevation Groundhog a whopping 80 feet. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned. The Ascent's profile looks a lot like a Firebird or a PD. It's slightly domey, but again, so floppy. And with flight numbers of, so I haven't done a ton of research on Vibram recently, but I know that their flight numbers were super different. If I recall, the center number is maybe supposed to be miles per hour, and that means it does something. I don't know, let's just find out. On my first throw, the Ascent is quite overstable. Now, I tried to throw it flat the first time, so I try extra hard the second time, and nope, still comes out just with a lot of hyzer and still very overstable. So on this last throw, I'm really trying to put like as much anhyzer as I can on it, but I am once again defeated by the floppiness. No floppy discs for my bag. Let's move on though to the Lace, rated at 50, 8, 580, 7, whatever that means. The Lace feels amazing. It has this subtle dome. It feels kind of like an 11 or 12 speed rim, and it feels like it could go far. And it does. Far to the right, that is. On the first two throws, it definitely felt like I was unintentionally putting it on a slight anhyzer. So I put my game face on and I let it rip on some hyzer, and boy, oh boy, that is good. This was easily the farthest throw of the day. Spoiler for upcoming discs, I guess. But this Lace bombed, flipping up from hyzer, drifting a bit before fading back to a really solid 340 feet. That's probably my best backhand drive in months. Now, I think the Lace works for me because it's in their firm rubber, and since the floppiness is gone, I am in. The Lace is definitely going in my bag as a reliably understable driver for easy turnovers. Last up in our trio of Vibram discs is the Ridge, rated at 10, 52, 65, or as the previous owner conveniently translated for us, 2301, it's a beaded putter with a flat top, and this rubber blend is their medium stiffness, so nowhere near as floppy as the Ascent, but not quite as hard as the Lace. And the Ridge is an incredible disc. Thrown hard and flat, it gets this gentle turn, but it comfortably finishes flat. On this low line, it was dead straight, great for approaches. And thrown hard on hyzer, it resists turning, barely flipping to flat for a very shapeable flight. I would compare the Ridge to a slightly beat-in premium plastic Envy from Axiom, and that makes it a great disc. But I don't think I can justify taking it out in place of an Envy. I've bagged the Envy for a long time. I've used it in multiple plastics. And, if you know a disc, you got to keep it in your bag. From our trio of Vibram discs, let's shift gears over to a collection of discs that kind of caught me by surprise. Yeah, it's just a bunch of MVP. Or is it? Here's the thing. When I got back into disc golf in 2020, MVP was already chugging along, pumping out some really cool discs. And then, of course, this happened in 2021, and thanks to the Holy Shot, they exploded in popularity and haven't really stopped since. But there was a before time, before Big Germ and Eagle McMahon, before Simon Lizotte and Silva Saarinen, even before James Conrad. MVP's actually been around for quite a while. All of these are MVP's old patent pending discs. Before they received the patent for the gyro overmold technology, all their discs said patent pending here on the bottom. And I've thrown almost no old MVP. Especially not two of these, as they are discontinued molds. So I cannot wait. Let's start though with a couple of the familiar molds to see how they compare to their modern equivalents, like these two, the Relay and Inertia. Now, a lot of people think of MVP as this up-and-coming brand, but the Relay and Inertia, both staples of MVP's lineup today, were approved by the PDGA over 10 years ago in 2015 and 2014. So, how did they fly back then? Well, incredibly, after all these years, the same as they do today. Here's the Relay being slightly understable, as expected. And the Inertia doing a bit of the same, but also I got some really solid distance on this Inertia, about 330 feet, which is really good for my backhand. Oh, and there's something else interesting I learned about old MVP discs. Did you know that they used to make a Rock 3? I mean, I'm definitely not saying they copied it, but you can see the inspiration. This is the Vector. No longer in production, the Vector predates the Relay and Inertia by at least 4 years, approved way back in 2010. And well, at least in this proton plastic, the age shows. But has it lost any of that overstability it originally had? No, it has not. Not in proton plastic, and not in neutron plastic. And I would love to hear why the Vector is no longer in production, because this could definitely bring some longtime Innova throwers over to the gyro technology. But before we get to my two favorite old MVP discs we found, let's take a look at two modern favorites, the Volt and the Mayhem. This is an old patent-pending Plasma Volt, the old classic. It's MVP's sort of beefy T-bird type slot. And the question is, has this old Volt lost any of that stability? Not even a little bit. It still has that nice fade that it always had. But what about the Mayhem? Well, for my arm, it has every bit of the overstability that a Mayhem should, and it easily cruised past 300 feet. Now, would I bag any of these MVP discs that I've thrown so far? Well, I don't know. The Vector is the only one that really jumped out as different, but it's also a little too overstable for my taste. But maybe one of these two will get the job done. This is an out-of-production driver, the Inspire. And this is a prototype Proton Insanity, which is apparently a big freaking deal. More on that in just a minute. First though, the Inspire. Approved back in 2014, it's honestly a disc that I'm not familiar with at all. It looks and feels a bit like the Crave, and MVP's website actually reveals something very interesting. The flight numbers are almost exactly the same as the Crave. 6.5 speed, 5 glide, negative 1.5 turn, and 1 fade. So does it fly like a Crave? Well, sort of. Exactly like a Crave? Honestly, I haven't thrown a Crave in a minute, but I remember it not having quite this much fade at the end, which I think actually makes it more like what I imagine the Servo is supposed to be like, although the Servo has never been all that different from the Crave for me. So I'm definitely very curious about the Inspire, but I don't know that it's going to find its way into my bag. But I do want to talk more about this Proton Insanity. Now, I don't know a lot about this specific Insanity firsthand, or that I could confirm online, but I was told a very interesting story that I would like to simply pass on to you and we can all try and decide if we think it's true. The story goes that MVP released a batch of these at the 2018 World Championships, just a prototype stamp and 100% Proton plastic. And this was apparently a huge deal. MVP fans went wild, they bought them all, and then immediately, of course, they were online for, over $100. Something about the story was compelling, and since the guy had a literal box full of these available, I bought 3 brand new in the bag. But today, I'm going to be throwing this one that was lightly used, and honestly, it is a gem. Firstly, have you ever seen an Insanity this domey? No, honestly, you haven't, because MVP didn't really make domey discs for years. Everything, including just about every Insanity that I've thrown from MVP, was board flat, but just look at this. Secondly, the plastic feels incredible. It's a little bit softer than some Proton that I've felt recently, but it has excellent grip, and it flies as good as it looks. On a flat release, it gently drifts to the right before pushing forward slightly at the end. And from a slide hyzer, it has this lovely slow turn before a gentle fade back, making it an effortlessly straight Insanity, and better than just about any that I've thrown in a long time. This Insanity is going straight in the bag. And that leaves us with just 2 more rare old discs to look at. But before we get to the Steady Ed Memorial Frisbee, let's look at this. What is this? Well, I spend a lot of time, anytime I'm in a disc golf store or at a pop-up shop, tournament, event somewhere, looking through used bins, looking through the inventory and asking the owner of that establishment, what's the weirdest, most obscure, most unusual thing that I've maybe not seen before? Because I love to learn all about discs, old discs, new discs, whatever, I want to know. And it's not often that I find one that I've never heard of, but this is one of them. And I thought it might be fun to take you all along with me as I do the research and kind of decipher what the disc is and what we can learn about it. So first, if we look at the stamp and the embossing on the back, it says something in Latin. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but Iactus diligens celere. A quick Google Translate gives us Iactus, to throw, diligens, careful, celere, fast. So, throw careful, throw fast. That's a disc golf right there. Also on the stamp and on the back, it says Disc Wing Golf and Quarter K. Finally, in the embossing, we have some excellent info on the back. Stalybridge, SK153WX, England. Now, a little bit of online research led me to a Reddit thread from 8 years ago that is talking about Discwing Golf closing 5 to 6 years before that. Discwing Golf is listed on gov.uk with only one individual attached as the director, Jonathan Potts. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because you watched Smarter Every Day's video all about disc golf aerodynamics. Because Destin went and talked to none other than the Dr. Johnny Potts, who did his PhD dissertation on the aerodynamics of disc flight. And that means that this disc, the Quarter K, was designed by that same man, Dr. Johnny Potts. And honestly, that kind of blew my mind because I'm a huge fan of Destin and Smarter Every Day. I've been watching it for years, love watching his videos with my son. We always learn something new and interesting. And when he started making videos about disc golf, I could not have been more pumped. So what's left for us to learn about the Quarter K? Oh yes, how does it fly? Well, let's take a quick look at it before I throw it because it's definitely seen better days. If that 8-year-old Reddit post is correct and they stopped production 5 to 6 years before that, this is at least 13 or 14 years old. And it shows. Lumpy, warped. The plastic is a bit soft, and it looks like it has a low parting line, so everything points to it being really understable. But looks can be deceiving. Now, my first throw started out on some hyzer, but even on this flatter release, the Quarter K amazingly still has quite a bit of overstability. And knowing what I know now about the disc, it is really cool to be throwing it at all. The Quarter K is not going to make my bag, but it is definitely going to be staying in my collection. And that takes us finally to this, a disc known as the Lines of Headrick. And honestly, this is the most that I've ever spent on a single disc, because I felt weirdly emotional about this disc when I saw it. I've only ever seen one before on display in a store. This is, of course, the memorial disc for the creator of disc golf, Steady Ed Headrick. His wish was to be cremated after he died and his ashes put into frisbees so that he could fly forever. And I think one of the reasons I felt so emotional is that this man who, died over 20 years ago had unintentionally kind of given me a purpose in life. I never felt like I knew what I was supposed to do. I was a terrible student in school. I struggled to concentrate in class. I didn't really care about school. My grades were barely good enough to play tennis in high school. And I worked a lot of random retail jobs. I was just good at customer service because I guess I was good at talking. And I was only good at my tech support job at Apple, which got me into a training job with Apple because I liked computers. And I don't know, it even still, after a decade at Apple, didn't really feel like I was supposed to be doing that or like I was really passionate about it. But as soon as I found disc golf again in 2020, I almost immediately knew I wanted to be doing something with it. And that's where Six-Sided Disc started from. It's where everything that led us to this started from, and our YouTube channel and everything. So these things that I do every day now that I feel fulfilled doing, that I get to express myself creatively, making content, making this crazy disc that people have taken a liking to, all of that is only possible because of disc golf, because of Steady Ed Headrick. So to have this piece of disc golf history, I don't really consider myself a collector of discs. I know I talked about wanting to keep the quarter K, and there are obviously discs that I have in a collection, but it's not like something I'm trying to save up and keep this pile of things. But this felt like something I just had to have. Am I going to throw it? Probably someday. That was, after all, his dying wish. But not today. And it's definitely not going in the bag. What's the most obscure, rare disc that you've come across? And do you bag any old discs? Let us know about them in the comments below. Remember, the disc is in the details. For Six-Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or becoming a member. Your support makes this content possible.